Good morning, everyone. In the last session, we discussed about the generic method references here. So, how this particular generic method references is working, we identified in the last example. And so today we'll discuss about the another important concept to call method references with constructors here. Okay, or we can call it as a constructor references. So how this particular constructor reference is going to work internally. So this is we need to understand very carefully here. So now we identify the similar way of creating this particular references for method, like whatever the static method we are having. Same way we can create the information for this particular constructors here. So now observe carefully how I'm trying to create this particular constructor information. So to write the constructor related logic, first what we need, again we need a functional interface first. So without the functional interface, lambda or method reference is not going to work. Okay, first we need functional interface. Now observe carefully. Now what I'm doing here. So any my function is there, my number. Okay, so my function is not there. Now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to create a one interface. I'm trying to create a my interface, my function. Okay, so this particular my function, what I'm doing internally, I'm trying to return my class is a class type. Okay, same the name of the function I'm making as a FUNC and one parameter. Getting the point. This is we are defining as a same, but what we need to understand here, my class here. So whatever the class we are doing here, we need to write one class here. Now here I'm trying to create a my class, and this particular class will contain the some informations here. And now observe carefully. Private interval. Okay, private interval. I'm trying to write the parameter like it's like a variable name, and now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to write the constructor. Okay, so this is the one parameters constructor I'm defining, and my class val is equals to 0. Val is equals to 0. And now what you need to understand, one get method I'm defining will return val. It's a simple one. Okay, whatever we define, these are all the simple information. Now you can observe carefully. This is the my class. Okay, my class we are discussing here. Private interval, private interval, and this is the constructor information. So this is the one more constructor. Like if this constructor is expecting parameter, and this constructor is not expecting any parameter. It's a default constructor. Now this is the method. This is the method. Okay. So finally, what we need to understand here. Finally, what we need to understand here, we created the one class here, and inside this particular functional interface, we are trying to return the class object. So now this is the first time we are discussing, because the functional interface methods, it will try to return the something primitive values. Okay, are the wrapper classes information. But now what we are doing is we are trying to return the class object. So here we are trying to return the class object. So now observe carefully what I'm doing here. I'm trying to write the another important example. So here we define the functional interface and we come up with the one class here. Here I'm going to write the demo here. Constructor demo. So inside this particular constructor demo, now what you need to understand here, here I'm going to write the main method. Here I'm going to write the main method. So once we define this particular main method, now what I'm doing here. So observe carefully, this is important here. So we already identified we created the one function. Okay, so this is nothing but my function we created. So now what I'm doing here, so my class constructor, or we can call it as a my constructor, and here I'm trying to write the references. So how we define the method references, same way I'm writing constructor references. Okay, my class. So here I miss a y. Now you can see in my class double colon here and new operator. Double colon and new operator. Now what you understand here? So this is indicating constructor reference. So yesterday we discussed here name of the class. Instead of this particular new keyword, we'll try to define the method name. But right now what we are doing here, we are trying to provide a double colon new operator. So new operator is indicating here, it is a constructor references here. Now what exactly it is doing internally? What exactly it is doing internally? So it is trying to create an object of this particular my class references, and internally what is the type we are making? My function is one of the functional interface. Now you can see my function is a functional interface, but internally the function method, what is the value it is returning? It is trying to return the class type. Okay, it is trying to return the class type. So this is one of the important example we need to understand. And after getting this, now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to call this method. So now observe mycon dot. Here we need to call the function, and we need to provide the values here. Okay, so we need to provide this particular values. Now this particular function, it is returning what type here? My class here. Okay, so now we can make this particular function, and after this func dot get value. Whenever I'm trying to run this particular get value, so what is the value we are getting? 100. What is the value we are getting? 100. But what you need to understand basically here, so if you carefully observe, this is the function we are calling func, like a function I'm defining here. Okay, this function is expecting one parameter, and it is trying to return the class type. This is important, we need to understand. But now if you observe inside the class what we are defining, so it's like a simple class. Now it is having one private variable and one of the public constructor and a default constructor and int method. Okay, int method. Now what you need to understand here, it's like a simple class we created. How this particular value is setting here, internally it is calling this particular my class constructor, so it is expecting one parameter. So how we are passing this? Now if you observe, this is important because it is a constructor reference. Here we are not passing any values. Okay, here we are not passing any values. Whenever I'm not passing any values, what happening internally? Whenever this particular function will call internally, this 100 value, it is going to set into the constructor parameter. For example, if I'm going to put a breakpoint, line number 7. Okay, if I'm running this example in a debug mode, now you can see it is calling the parameters constructor. What is the V it's containing? It is containing the 100 value. But from where we are passing this? Because internally, whenever we are calling this particular function, now if you see, here we are calling the function. Internally, compiler, it is converting into the one parameterized constructor. Okay, for example, I'm close this and I'm going to comment out this. I'm going to comment out this particular parameterized constructor. Now you can see what happening internally. We are getting an error. Why we are getting an error? Now we need to understand this error message. So the type my class does not define the parameter. Getting the point? So whatever the type we are defining, the type called my class, and internally it is not defined the my class int. That is acceptable here. Getting the point. So this is important information. Now, so as we discussed, the method references and lambda information, what we discussed basically. So this particular function interface, it's contain any parameter. It should match with the lambdas, method references. Now it should match with the constructors. Getting the point. So here we are expecting one parameter. Here we are expecting one parameter, and the constructor, it is not able to handle the parameter. For example, if I'm trying to remove this, if I'm trying to remove this particular 100 value, we are not going to get any error. Getting the point? We are not getting any error. So why we are not getting any error? Because the functional interface method and constructors both are now matching here. How it is matching? This function interface is not taking any parameters, and so this constructor, it is a empty constructor. It's like a default constructor. Okay, it's like a default constructor here. So this is important, we need to understand. So this particular parameter, it should match with this particular constructor. It should match with this particular constructor. Then all the values are going to injected at runtime. Okay, so this is the one of the important example we need to understand the constructor references. How we are passing? This is the name of the class, and this is the new keyword we are using. This is the particular new keyword we are using to call the constructor here. Okay, and now what I will do, I'm going to write the generic type here. So because this is the simple example we defined here, but same example, if I'm going to modify with the generic type, how it is going to work. Now you can see here I'm trying to write type I'm defining, and here I will make T, and this will also return T. Okay, now here I'm going to make T. Here we need to make as a null. So 0, it is not applicable here. Okay, so instead of this particular int, we can make as a T. So now you can see the functional interface and class here, everything we made as a generic here. Okay, everything we made as a generic. Now what we can do here, only we need to change the information. Instead of this particular my functional interface, the first one integer I'm making. Okay, so this particular function also we need to use integer. We need to use a integer. And the second one, what we can do, we can go for the string information. How I'm trying to use? So something like a my constructor one. Here I'm going to call my constructor. Here I will pass simply string here. Okay, so here I can change to the type as a string, and here also string here. Now function one, with help of this particular function one, I'm calling this. Now these are all the two example. First one is the integer, second one is the string. Okay, this is one of the important the constructor references. We'll call it as a constructor references. The constructor references basically, again, it will try to depends on the functional interface, the method parameters. Based on the functional interface method parameter, the constructor parameters are going to define here. Okay, so this is important because if you see any predefined functional interface, so it will work internally while all the streams API here. So this is one of the important example we need to understand. So based on the functional interface method, we can easily understand like how it is working internally. So we can go for the lambda or we can go for the method references here. So any one of the concept is applicable by the functional interface methods here. Okay, now you can see now what I'm doing here, instead of this particular type I made as a class here. Now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to define this as a return type here, r comma t. Okay, r comma t. Here I'm not going to use any this particular t. Simply I'm making r. Simply I'm making this particular r here. Okay, so this is one of the important example we need to understand here. So this particular class is going to take same as it is, values and constructor information, default and get value. But now what I'm doing here, here I'm going to write the class information. So how we can write this particular classes information? How we can write this particular one of the class information? So this is important we need to understand. So now observe carefully. This my function, it is expecting two parameters. So of string, sorry, integer, or you can write the return type something like my class. Okay, so this is will applicable here, and the same way here also you can write my class. Now when you are trying to write this, now what happening, the output here, same output we are getting, the 100 into string. Instead of defining the method return type as a static, now what we did here, we come up with a function, generic format here. This particular r we are making as a generic format. So this is the type, and this is the r, it is indicating return type. Okay, and now another important information what you can do. So this is the another important you can write. So here only you can write one method, static method, and you can call the particular method here. So how we define this particular method references? Same way, now it is applicable to call the same method. How we can write that one? Now if you see here, I'm writing one static method, something like my class. This is we already discussed here. This is nothing but my function r and t. Okay, and if the my function r and t, what we can do, const we can provide, and we need to write this particular t value, and internally what we can do, what we can return, const dot, okay, function it is not calling here, r comma t, or I want to make return type here function n, or no, b. Okay, so observe carefully what we are doing here, we are calling the one of the static function. Okay, this is we already discussed here. So it is the static method will define, and here we are trying to write the generic function, or we can call it as a one of the functional interface, and it is expecting one value here. So this particular value I'm going to pass here. So entire this particular section what we are doing here, we are going to pass as a the constructor information, and this is the value. Getting the point? This is important information we need to understand here. So how I'm trying to call here, how I'm trying to call this information. So it is a simple one. Instead of calling this the line number 9, what I'm doing here, I'm going to call my class factory, something like v I'm going to give as 100, and here instead of this particular con, I can provide this. I can provide this particular information. Now what happens internally, it will try to give you the particular class here. So directly you can call this get value. Okay, now you can print this directly, sorry, it will print this particular value. So now observe, using this particular static method, we are calling the same what we defined here. Now we are getting the 100 value. So instead of calling explicitly this particular function 2 times, now what is the important we can write? We can define the one static method. We can define the one static method. So this is the particular class object. If you are not interested basically this, you can write this directly here. Instead of this, we can write directly this also, it will work here. Okay, now you can see I'm calling only the one information in the single line. In a single line, all the code is calling here. So instead of defining the multiple lines here, 3 lines we defined. But now what I'm doing here, in the line number 9, in the single line only, I'm defining this particular information here. So this is the constructor reference I'm passing, and this is the value I'm going to pass. And finally, I'm trying to call the get value here. I am trying to call this particular get value. Okay, this is the important information we need to understand regarding this particular constructor references. Okay, so any questions here?
Sir, I have one question. So for this line number 8, this new word it's calling and forget which method. I forget this method is calling.
No, it is not going to call any method. It will call the constructor.
Which one, Prabhuji?
Okay. See, basically, this is the example we are discussing about the constructor reference. Now, if you go to this particular my function, it is expecting one parameter. Okay, this is the function we define. It is a return type we are providing, and this particular function is expecting one parameter. Whenever the generic function, or we can call it as the functional interface, the abstract method, whatever we are writing, based on this particular function parameter, the constructor it is going to call. So here we are having one parameter. So internally, this particular class, this constructor is going to call. How it is calling here? Here if you see, now what we are doing here, we are trying to providing the constructor information here, and this is the value I'm passing. Why this particular value I'm passing here? Now if you read this is the functional interface. Okay, my function is the one of the functional interface we created, and this is the type value I'm providing. Internally, I'm trying to call this particular function. The FUNC function we define this function. Okay, this function it is calling, but this function internally it is going to call this constructor. Why it is going to call this particular constructor? Because the function, this particular function is going to, because it is an abstract method. Whatever the function we define, it is does not contain the body here. Just we are declaring the method here. Okay, this particular method at runtime it is going to override with the method body, and the value it is going to call this particular constructor here. Okay, so this is the particular constructor it is going to call internally whenever we are calling this. For example, now if I'm going to remove this particular parameter, if I'm going to remove this particular parameter, now it is getting an error. Okay, so here I can remove this particular 100 value, and here also I can remove this particular v. But now observe carefully. Whenever I'm trying to remove this, what happening internally? It is trying to call this particular default constructor. If I'm going to comment out this, okay, if I'm going to comment out this, you will get an error here. Now you can see the line number 8, earlier it is not getting an error, now it is getting an error. Now what you understand, this method, if it is not taking any parameters, internally it is trying to call the default constructor. The default constructor I commented here. Whenever I commented this default constructor, so all the keywords we are getting an error. So here now you can see my class new keyword is getting, here also we are getting an error, here also we are getting an error. Now if I am trying to enable this again, now you can see all the errors are resolved. Now what you understand here, this functional interface, the method, it will try to defend on the constructor. Why it will defend on the constructor? Because here we are using the new keyword. The new keyword internally, it is trying to create the object of this particular my class by calling the constructor. How the constructor is going to identify based on the functional interface method parameter. Based on the functional interface method parameters only, the constructor is going to identify which constructor I want to call. Okay, so is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so any other questions? Anyone having any questions regarding this particular constructor reference? Because this is one of the important example we are discussing. Like first we discuss about the lambdas, later we discuss about the method references, now we discuss about the constructor references. So these are all the very important concept we discuss here. Now we'll try to identify the another important example called, we'll try to identify the another example, something like we'll discuss about the string handling. Okay, one of the important example, string handling. So what exactly the string handling is going to provide? Basically, from the beginning onwards, we are trying to discuss about the string class. Like its string is one more data type we are using. How we use the primitive data type like int, double float, char, boolean. How we define this particular primitive data type here. Same way, we are trying to define the one of the data type called string here. Okay, and here what we need to understand is string is a one of the sequence of characters. It's like a group of characters. So if I'm trying to write any string here internally, it's contain the group of characters here. So this is the simple example you can identify here. This is we are writing as a string. This particular string internally, it is containing group of characters here, multiple characters. So S, T, R, these are all the characters, and they are defining as a string here. But how we are going to create a string object here? String is one of the wrapper classes we can identify, because for the primitive types we are not going to create an object. For the wrapper classes we'll try to create an object here. Same way here for this particular string class also we are going to create an object with the help of this particular new keyboard. But we have a different types of constructors here. Based on the different types of constructors we are going to create a object of this particular string class. Okay, now what you need to understand here? What you need to understand regarding this particular string class here. So what I suggested here, basically this particular string class is going to implement object types here. Whatever we are discussing here, internally it will try to implement the object type here. Internally it will try to implement the one of the object type important we need to understand here. So basically implementing this particular string as our built-in objects, because this is the predefined class. It is not the custom class we are going to write here. So this is coming from the 1.0 onwards, and it is a predefined class. So just we need to understand what are all the fundamentals we are having inside this particular string class. And if I'm going to write the string classes, how we can write, what are the different constructors we are having. So this information we are going to understand it. So as I explained here, it is one of the built-in class here, and it is going to allow the Java to provide the complement of this particular features here. Whatever the features we are having inside this particular string handling. So we'll see one by one what are the different features we are having inside this particular string class here. Okay, and now you can see one of the important features, something like comparing this particular strings. Okay, searching for the strings here and concatenating this particular strings, and change the letter case of like uppercase to lowercase, lowercase to uppercase. These are all the main information we are going to achieve with the help of this particular string here. It's like a comparing the two strings here, adding the two strings object here, getting the print, searching the some of the strings information, and converting object lowercase into uppercase something. Okay, so we'll see, and so this particular string is also having number of constructors here. So the number of ways we can create a object of this particular string class, because it is contained internally multiple constructors here. Okay, so now observe carefully here. I'm going to write the string information. So first we'll say how this particular string class is available. So now this is the one of the final class. This is, if you observe carefully, we discuss about the all the vapor classes. All the vapor classes internally final classes. Okay, all the vapor classes internally final classes. So what we understand the final? We are not going to extend all the final classes here. Okay, it is containing lot of methods internally. This particular string class can contain a lot of method. Now you can see this is the constructor, and this is the one more constructor, and this is the one more constructor, and this is the one more constructor. So these are all the multiple constructors we are having. Now you can see it is a overloading constructor. How we can identify it is a overloading constructor? Because name of the constructor is same, the type of parameters are different here. Okay, this is important. Now you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Around 15 constructors we are having. Getting the point? These are all the 15 constructors we are having inside this particular string class. But what we need to understand, the parameters are different here. So now I'm coming from the below. He's expecting string builder is a parameter. Second one is string buffer. Third one is expecting byte. Now if I'm going to write this particular byte here, we are going to provide the bytes array as a parameter. Internally, it is calling this bytes 0 bytes dot length. Now we'll see this is also one of the public constructor. So directly this particular constructor is also we can call here. Directly we can call this particular constructor here. Now we identified, because most of the constructor internally it is going to call one another. So it's like a chain calling here. Now you can see this is identified. Now this is another constructor. Now you can see along with this particular byte you can pass this particular cat set. This constructor is defined from the 1.6. We can define this particular 1.6. Now you can see char set. Using this particular char set parameter, what we are doing is, so this particular char set to be used to decode. It is going to use it to decode the format of string, this particular string here. And now you can see construct a new string object by decoding the specified array of bytes. By decoding the specified array of bytes here. So this is this constructor purpose here. Okay, because of that we are going to use this particular char set information. So same way we will have multiple constructors here. We'll have multiple constructors here. So this is, we are going to identify how these particular objects are going to use internally. But what we need to understand, we identify the different types of constructors. Around we are having 15 types of constructors we are having. But whenever we are trying to create a string object, once we are creating this particular string object here, we are not going to change the string object. So why we are not going to change this particular string object here? Getting the point. So now this may be one of the serious restrictions here. Once you created this particular string object, we are not going to change. If you are trying to perform we can perform the all type of operation inside this particular string. Once object is created, we can perform any number of operations here. There is no restrictions here, but only the restrictions once we are creating an object, we are not going to modify here because of this particular immutable string. So it is a fixed string. Once object is created, we are not going to modify the string, because internally it is having one of the important feature called immutable. Immutable is nothing but it is a fixed here. Okay, the original string is going to unchanged here. If you are trying to modify it, it's going to affect it into the new string here. So we'll see how this particular string is immutable here. Okay, so first what we need to understand here, we'll try to identify the different types of constructors here. So to understand this particular example, now what I will do, I'm going to create one more package here. So why I'm creating these many packages here? Because whenever I'm trying to push these particular changes, you can easily understand how this particular examples are created internally. Okay, how this particular example are created internally. So I'm creating S as a small, because if I'm going to give S as a capital, it is a data type. So package name, it cannot contain the keywords here. And here we need to understand the basic example of this particular thing. Now understand here. Now I'm defining one of the main method. Now here observe carefully what I am doing is, we already identified this is the char array I'm trying to create. How we can create this particular char array? So here the way of creating this, so this is the way of creating this particular char array. Okay, how many characters we provided? We provided around 4 characters here. Okay, once we provide this particular 4 characters, now what I'm doing is I'm trying to create an object here. String s1 is equals to new string. Observe carefully how many constructors we are having. These many constructors here. So the default constructor. Okay, from here to here, now you can check all the constructors here. So these are all the different types of constructors we are having inside this particular string classes here. Okay, so inside this particular that we are going to use this particular. So the third constructor, with this one is expecting char array values. It is expecting char array values here. Okay, so we created the same one. It is a character array. We created this and I'm trying to pass as a character. After this, now what I will do? Now what I will do, if you observe carefully, string s2 is equals to new string here. Now you can see another information. Now you can see here after this particular character, we have a one more character, one more constructor. It is expecting string as a parameter. Getting the point? String as a parameter. This is one of the important example we are discussing here. First one is this particular char we provided. Second one we are trying to provide as a string original. So what is the string original? Something like s1. This is the s1 I'm passing. Now you can see how we are having the relation here. Just we created this particular character. Now I pass a character array as a parameter to this particular constructor of this particular string, and we created one s1 object. Now I'm trying to create a s2 by passing this particular the s1 original object here. Okay, now I'm creating the s1 and s2. So we'll print this s1 and s2 here. S1 and S2. If we observe carefully, what happening internally? Both are printing Java. Both are printing Java. First, what we need to understand this constructor. So this is the array type. Basically, it is a character array. Now the character array internally, what happening internally? It is converting into string, because string is a group of collection like sequence of characters here. So the same thing we are doing here. So basically, it is the collection of characters. It's converting into this particular string here. So if I'm going to see, this is the character is expected internally, and this constructor it is calling internally value 0, length and null. Okay, now observe carefully what is doing here. If the length is 0, so it is trying to do this particular value and coder. But here this particular length is not 0. Now what I'm doing here, so it is trying to check compared strings here. If it is yes, it is trying to compress this particular information. Okay, otherwise what happening internally, it will go for this particular format, it will convert the byte format. So value, whatever the value we are passing, something like a character array, now it will come to here. So let me put a breakpoint here. We'll debug this particular code so that we'll understand what happening internally. Now, if you observe carefully, this is the constructor we are calling. What is the length we are having? What is the length we are having right now? So here we can see the length. Length is 93. Getting the pen? Length is 93. But how we are calling this particular length is 93? We'll go to from where it is called here. Okay, I think this is not the original object what we are expecting. So here I'm going to put a breakpoint, line number 7. and I will remove this because this is not calling from the our main class. This is calling from the different location. Now this is we need to understand here. Here I'm going to put a breakpoint. Otherwise we'll go to this. So this is the constructor. What is the value we are having? And I'm calling this particular constructor. Now read this. What is the length we are having right now? 4. Here you can see 4 we are having. Because how many characters we are having? 4 only. Now if you go to this, here you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. The length we are having 4. Okay. So once we are providing the length 4, this particular condition is not going to satisfy. Once it is not satisfying, what we need to do? This we need to. So now you can see compared strings is making as a string. So where it is making as a string? Here it is making as a string. Now what you understand? It is one of the static block. Okay, it is one of the static block. We already discussed in the previous example. So instance block, static block, constructors, okay, and a method. Earlier example we already discussed it. Now coming back to it, they are making as a true. So what exactly they are doing is, what is the value we are having? Now this is basically character array. Okay, these are all the 4 characters we are having. And what is the off we are having? It is 0. Okay, from beginning onwards, which index onwards we want to copy, it will providing this particular off, and the length we are having 4. Now what it will do internally, basically it is trying to converting into byte array. It is trying to converting into byte array. This is one of the important example we need to understand. So we are providing character information here, but finally it is converting into byte. So once it is converted, what happening internally? Now you can see this is the value 74, 65, 86, 65. But how it is converted? We discussed in the previous example. It is going to use, it is going to use the particular Unicode style. It is going to use Unicode style. What you need to understand basically. So inside the Unicode, the character, what is the value we are going to have? The value is going to use. So this is the format we are going to use. String UTF. So if I'm going to open this, now they are creating a byte based on this particular length here. They're calling this particular compress here. Okay. So now what it will do? So they are going to use so this is the particular logic they are trying to use here. So they are using the loop and they are creating SRC. The SRC, it's nothing but the source of this particular cache set here. And what is the SRC off? SRC off, we are having value. Based on this, it is converting into this particular char. Okay, the char we are loading from this particular char. Now you can see here they are trying to converting byte. So this is the explicit typecasting. Okay, explicit typecasting they are converting. So how it will convert here? Because if you want to convert a char to byte, it's going to use the Unicode, the like ASCII values, whatever the ASCII value for this particular character. Based on that, it will convert here. Okay, so this is the way it is converting, and finally it is trying to return the length here. Okay, now you can see. So once it is written this particular length, they are trying to return this particular RET. RET is nothing but the byte array. So here the byte array we are going to use. Now we identify all the byte arrays. So this array is not going to null. Now value, whatever the value we are having, we are trying to set into this is the class level variable. Okay. Now if you see here, we define this. After defining this particular class, public final class string, and it is implementing these many interfaces. But what you need to understand here, it is the type they provided. Okay, it is one of the type they are using. They are trying to set this particular value, and later what is they are doing here? So it is trying to use with a coder. So like we have a different two coders here. Now one of the UTF and what is another one is Latin. Like it is like a formatter. So based on this particular which format, we are going to convert the string value into byte array. Okay, so based on this particular Latin and UTF format, the values are going to converted. So this is basically one of the char set information. this particular CAD set is going to take care of conversion of the one data type like string data type into byte data type. Now, after converting, we are trying to returning constructor. Okay, this is the constructor it is returning here. Now, what you understand, the values are setting into this particular byte array. The values are set it into this particular byte array. Once the values are set it into this particular byte array, now what you need to understand here, now what you need to understand basically how this particular values again it's converting. Because here we are getting something like not a values here. We are getting again characters information. So if I'm going to print this particular S1, we are getting Java. But finally, what we did, whatever the character we are using, the characters are converted into this particular byte format. But whenever we are trying to converting, again, it is trying to converting into the character format. So for example, if I go to this particular string and I will open two string here. Now what we are doing here, we are trying to return this. Just we are trying to return this. What exactly this indicating here? It is nothing but it is trying to return the current class object. What is the current class object basically? String only. Okay, this is important we need to understand. So the string class basically it will try to use the different types of char set to convert the byte value into again character here. Okay, so this is the way of converting the information. Now the second one we are doing the same value we are getting. But what we understand here, based on this particular character array internally, we are calling one compress method. The compress method internally, it is trying to converting into byte array. The byte array values based on the UTF, string UTF format, again, it will try to convert it into the string data type here. Okay, this is, we need to understand internally how it is working. So another important what we need to understand here, yeah, I'm going to write one more character. So one more, the constructor I'm calling it. Now, second constructor I'm setting. So observe carefully. So second constructor, this is the first char array parameter we are calling. Now from the offset, from which index onwards we want to copy, we can call this and count. And so how many characters we want to copy, this is we are going to specify. Okay, I want to specify something like 1 and it needs to copy only two values. Okay, it needs to copy only two values. So observe this particular constructor and current example. So only it is calling AV. Getting the point? It is calling like it is trying to copy only AV. So AV is nothing but only two values it is copied here. What are the two values it's copied here? So A is start with the one index location and I suggest only two values. So whenever I suggest two values, because these are all the index locations here basically. So 0, 1, 2 and 3. And so it start with the 1 because I given as a position as a 1. So it will try to copy the 1 and I said only two values. So 1 and 2. Getting the point? Only two values I suggested to copy this. So because of that it is copied only AV. This is the important information which we are having another constructor. Basically it is giving the information how many characters I want to copy, the last parameter. The last parameter will provide the information. Okay, so if I want to make this another important condition, we can make like this. So like ch dot length here, ch dot length. So length what I am giving here 4. So it's going to start the copying the values from 1 to 4. But observe we don't have a 1 to 4 basically. We don't have a 1 to 4. What happening internally? We are getting an exception. Now you can see this. This is the first time we are seeing the different exception. String index out of bound exception. We discussed about the array index out of bound exception. But right now we are getting string index out of bound exception. Why we are getting string index out of bound exception here? So if you observe carefully, what is the indexes we are having? 0, 1, 2 and 3 because inside the 0 j will it's going to store and JAVA. Getting the point? So JAVA, this is one of the important example we need to understand here. Now finally, what I'm doing here, what is the size we are having? Basically, size we are having 4, but index is starting with 0 and it is ended with the 4. But condition we made, length is also 4. Okay, whenever we are accessing this particular 4, there is no index here. Getting the point? There is no 4 index here. This is one of the important we need to understand. We started with only 3. It is ended with 3 only, but still we are accessing 4. Now what is the best way? We need to make -1. Length to -1. If you observe carefully, if you observe this particular length -1, now we are not getting any error. So it is copying AVA. Why it is copying AVA only? Because I started position 1 only. If the position start with 0, we'll copy all the values. But here I started the position as a 1. But what you understand, whenever you are making this particular length, we got the particular exception. Why we are getting an exception? It's because of the fourth, the last index we don't have inside this particular character array. Okay, because of that, now what we need to make as a 1 -1 here. Because the indexes are start with 0, the sizes are started with 1. Okay, this is important. So we identify the two constructors we are having, the character related. So same way we have a additional constructors, we will have something like, let me write, so BARR I'm defining. It's like a byte error. And here 96, 85, 74, 23 we cannot make, 65, 68. Okay, these are all the some different values I'm making. Now what I will do, instead of this particular S1, now I'm trying to pass this particular byte. Okay, now I'm trying to pass this particular byte array. So whenever I'm trying to pass this particular byte array, BARR. Okay, now, so whenever I pass this particular BARR, the S2 will give you the information. Now you can see, first one it is printing AVD, second one how it is converting, because this is the byte constructor. Okay, this is I'm passing byte constructor, but internally we are getting this particular values here. Internally we are getting, these are all the values how we are getting based on the Unicode, like the ASCII values for each character. What is the ASCII value we are going to have? It will try to print this particular information. Now along with this, now what we can understand here, I will give you some additional information. So 101, 115 and 124. Okay, and here I want to provide something like 1 and something like BR dot length -1. Okay, this is the constructor I'm calling this. This is the one more constructor we are having inside this particular string. So you can see this is the one value we are having. So this is not, you can see U, J, A, D, these are all the capital letters, and ES, these are all the small letters. But how we are getting? Because of these two values. Okay, sorry, I think 101 and 115. Because of this, we are getting small characters, and this is the R symbol. Whatever the pi symbol, like the pipe symbol we are using in our Java, simply we'll call it as a R. Okay, this is the way of converting. Now we'll see what happening internally. Now you can see this is the code they are doing and decoding into string. Getting the internally, they are decoding into this particular string here. Finally, they are returning this particular constructor. Okay, so we, even though if we provide the byte value, because of this particular decode, what is doing internally, it is converting into the string style here. It is converting into the all the character based on the byte value whatever we given. So this is important example we need to understand here. Okay, so any questions? So regarding this particular two constructor, first one we provided character, second one we provided byte.
Sir, so line number 7. So we are how, like in the real scenario, how do we know like what answer we should write there? It's converting like UJADES.
Okay, so to understand this now, you need to read this basically. Where we are having, I think not this table. Where we are having. If I'm going to show 160, 192, I think not this. Somewhere we are having one website. Let me show you that. One 28. Now you can see here 65. This is the byte number we provided as a 65. Now it is returning a value. Same way, now I will copy this. So 96. First we will see the 96 where we are having 96. Now you can see. So this is the symbol we are going to get for this particular 96. So this is the value. And if we are not identifying 96, we'll go for the 85. 85 you can see U value. Okay, 85 it is returning U. So the output we are getting or not? We are getting U. Okay, later J we are getting. So what is the J value we are having? 74. So we'll see here 74J. Okay, so based on these values, it will try to print. Now 65 we are having here. And another one 68 here. 68D. Okay, now you can see same value. So UJAD. So these are all the capital values. Now, if we identify 101 and 115, 101 and 115, you can read this. 101 we are getting as a E, and 115 we are getting as a S. The same thing we are getting. Here now you can see ES. Okay, so this is the way the values it's going to check in the table. What exactly the character we are having, the character it will return here. Okay, so any questions?
Got it, sir. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, if we don't have anything, so we'll continue tomorrow. We are going to discuss more about this particular string classes. So just we discuss the few of the constructors here, and we have a lot of methods we are having inside this particular string class. For example, if I'm going to provide, so up to these are all the constructors. Up to these are all the constructors we discuss here. Now, these are all the methods basically. So length is one method, is empty, caret, code point before, so get byte equals something. We have a different method we are having. We'll try to identify the different method what we are having inside this particular string class here. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow to discuss about the string related one of the important methods informations here. Okay, so tomorrow also one of the important example, like one of the important topic we are discussing. String basically in day to day we are going to write multiple times. So now you can think how much this particular string class is important here. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.